Hey Flosstube, I'm Michelle from Michelle's Romantic Tangle, and I have had a couple of people ask me if I would do something explaining how I do confetti stitching, and of course I can do that. I don't know if I love the process of confetti stitching. Lately I have been in a mindset where it's my favorite thing ever. What I love are the projects that contain confetti stitching, and sometimes that's a little confetti stitching, and sometimes it's, oh my gosh, this whole thing is a nightmare. So I'm talking about confetti stitching on full coverage projects. If you are looking for the confetti stitching that's like a scattering of stars across linen, I can't help you with that one. I can help you with this. So I'm going to show you a few of my latest favorite confetti stitching heavy products. This is the Hedgehogs with Lingonberries, which is a reelless kit. Here's Ripe Apples, which is another reelless kit. You'll notice most of these aren't done because confetti stitching takes time. Here is All Is Calm. It's a Dimensions Gold Collection kit, and actually this one is not as confetti stitching heavy as I thought it would be. That basket is going to make me insane. And then this one is Pyramid of Skulls. It's a pattern I got off of Etsy, and this puppy is nothing but confetti stitching. And I've lost my lost cross stitching needle. Oops, I'll find it when I'm done. So I learned to cross stitch. I bought a kit, and it was before the days of YouTube, and I just kind of read the directions and hoped for the best, and I picked up some tips here and there. I am not claiming that this is the correct and proper way to do confetti stitching. It's what I do, and you can see I finish projects, so it works for me. I will admit I have super messy backs. I am not focused on keeping my back neat. I don't know does someone do projects like this and keep their backs neat? Because I can see on other types of stitching, I could keep my back neat if I tried hard enough. On this, I'm not sure if I could, and I'm not trying. I grid my fabric for absolutely everything, especially if it is a project that has confetti stitching. I can count, but if you get a little bit off on one of these trees, and then you build off of that, and you get a couple days stitching done before you find out how you went wrong, maybe there are stitchers who can track back and find that mistake. I personally can't do it, and I have abandoned way less projects since I don't know who told me gridding was a thing. Whoever it was, thank you, thank you, thank you, because you've made it possible for me to stitch things like this. So I grid my fabric for everything. I do not worry about my backs. And then what I do to help keep my sanity is I look for landmarks. If you're stitching something like this is Ironwork Gate, Grafts by Barbara and Cheryl. There's just a little confetti stitching. There's some bushes and some flowers. So I will stitch all of the straight lines, all of the things that have an obvious rhyme or reason to them. And then I'll go back and do the confetti stitching because I'm working around the straight lines. And I am sure on this because everything I've done with buildings and plants, if I make a mistake on this tree, I'm just throwing in some green squares to fix it, and as long as it is a green blob in proportion with the rest of what's going on, I don't worry about it. Bushes and trees, I'm not going to stress about getting it right. The shading on the skulls, I have faith that there is an ultimate how these colors work together, so I am trying not to fudge on this one. When I got towards the end of these hedgehogs, I really did try to get it right, but there are a couple of spots here in the brown. This is all brown confetti stitching. If I couldn't figure out what shade of brown it was going to be, I slapped in a shade of brown that I knew was next to it, and I don't think you could tell. I'm not going to go looking for my mistakes. Nobody is going to look at this closely enough to find the mistakes. I could totally take it to the needle workshop and somebody might look, but that's in the real world, no one is going to look to see my mistakes. So If I don't have easy landmarks, and ripe apples is a good example of that, this basket weave is not, it's not conducive to anything I can think of to do. So I think I stitch what's called cross country. So I will pick a color and I will follow it until I run out of thread, and pick a color and follow it till I run out of thread. And with this basket weave, I'm winding up with isolated little spots of I don't know what goes there. So I will take something like this red, which is an easy symbol to find on the chart. It's an easy symbol to find on the project. And then I will go, okay, my blank spot is so many stitches down and over from the red, and I will count down and over and figure out what symbol that is. And then I will take a highlighter and I will circle it on my chart, because if I blink, I've lost it. There is counting and recounting, and I have found that it works much better. And this is probably a better example of that. If I start in a corner and go and fill in everything as I go, instead of leaving those little orphan stitches to find later, life is easier for me. With the hedgehogs, I left way too many things that I had to backtrack later and figure out, and that is why the hedgehogs took me absolutely forever to finish. I have had people ask me if I park, and I actually do not park. These are just where I have run out of thread, and I run it down the back out of my way, and then I will, once I've got other stitches covering those ends, I'll go back and snip these. I do it this way partially because I'm too lazy to weave in the backs as I go, the ends into the back as I go, and partially because sometimes you find out that you needed one more color of that stitch, or one more color of that thread, and I can rethread one of these and go back and put that color in without starting a whole new thread. Something like All Is Calm, I do have, this is white, I know it's white, I was done doing white for the moment, so I just run it way off the edge of the fabric and park it there until I'm ready to get back to it. That is not the fancy formal kind of parking that I hear about people doing, and I've watched the videos, I've read the descriptions, I understand in theory how that is supposed to work, but in reality I haven't been able to make my own stitches do that. If you have trees, if you have the edges of buildings, find a landmark and use that to keep your placement. With these little hedgehogs, I wound up using their eyes and some of the berries. This was hard. The skulls have been, I love this piece. I am head over heels for this piece, but when I first started it, it was a nightmare. And what I wound up doing, the grid line, I gridded my fabric, but the grid lines on the chart itself are not easy to see. I could have gone in with like a highlighter and traced over them, which would have been a smart thing to do, but I didn't do it. So I stitched the black. There are big patches of black, and I was able to stitch the black and figure out where that was going to go. And then I went in and I kind of worked around the edges of the black, and as I've done more and more stitching, I have done more and more landmarks for myself. And I will show you, I don't have a really fancy stitch with me setup, but I've got a little bit of chart here. This has got to count as fair use since it's such a tiny fraction of the chart, and it's for educational purposes, and legitimately there is nothing nefarious you could do with this little bit of the chart. So the blacks and white stars, I stitched those this morning. I know that this is green because it is a memorable color compared to the others. Those two symbols are right there. So since I know where I am there, I know that here I have the little circle with a C, so I am going to be able to count over and do the circle with a C. Once I've done that, I'll use the circle with a C, which is like a mustardy color, and I will do the U's. And then, what have I got going on here? You can see how well this works. Actually, the U's go on that side of that. I've never tried to read a chart while filming before, so I will do the little dots to line up with the green, and that is how I create landmarks in my stitching to use to keep track in my own head of where I am and what I need to stitch next. This project I started with the blobs of black. I'll insert a picture of what that looked like early on. After I had my blobs of black done, I was able to work along the edges of them and add more colors, then use those colors as a landmark. This one right here was a big red dot on the chart, and again, it's an easy color to recognize compared to the others. So instead of working in relationship with the black, I was working in relationship with the reddish brown. And bit by bit, I have managed to make sense of it and to get this far. And at this point, I have the confidence that I'll be able to finish it. This has actually been one of my most tedious confetti stitch projects ever, because it doesn't have buildings or branches or easy things to use for landmarks, and it's not bushes or trees, so I didn't feel like I could just throw in a random pop of a color to fill in the space, because I'm sure that the shading is important, and the more I stitch and the better it looks, the more confident I am that I need to keep really carefully counting and getting those colors exactly where they're supposed to be. For plants and bushes and trees, I will totally continue putting in random dollops of green when they suit my purposes. Thank you for watching this. I hope that for the people who wanted to know how I do confetti stitching, it helped. Like I said, I don't claim that this is the one perfect right way to confetti stitch. I don't think I do any of my stuff the one perfect right way. It's how I do it, and it works for me. I'm Michelle with Michelle's Romantic Tangle, and I'll be back with you with more videos again soon.